Umbria, Italy, the land that time forgot. These quiet streets have always been an artisan's paradise. With no coastline to directly access shipping routes and no foreign neighbors to easily trade with, people here learned long ago how to thrive on their own. Using nature as their muse, many locals grow their own food, make their own textiles, and developed unique styles of art.
We produce pottery here since the medieval age, because the clay that we use for making these vases is found here in the Tiber River.
In this incubator for creativity, the old methods are key to who they are.
We bring the DNA of being Italian, the DNA of being in Umbria, because we are very linked to the nature.
Even in the modern world, Umbria's artisans remain steadfast and passionate about what they do and how they do it.
It's not only for me or for Umbria. Every single community has to preserve his history and his traditional work. This is really important.
That sense of history and creativity shines through in everything they do. Umbria has long prized its independence, and sometimes that comes with a price. Over many centuries, as Umbrians tried to resist papal rule, they often had to fend for themselves. Luckily, their lands are fertile, and even today, their woods are home to a rare treasure. Here in the green heart of Italy, one family seeks it out.
Io sono Andrea Bianconi.
Io sono Maurizio Bianconi.
Siamo cercatori di tartufi
in Umbria.
When it comes to artisanal foods, fresh truffles are culinary gold. Umbrians had harvested the elusive fungi for at least 600 years. Still, finding them is an art.
Allora io cerco i tartufi da una decina d'anni.
Io ricerco i tartufi da quando ho 14 anni. Con il babbo mi sono appassionato.
A family hobby for generations became a family business 30 years ago.
Brava, 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 dai.
Most varieties of truffles defy cultivation. Finding them requires an expert nose. Narina, or Neri, is the family chief truffle hunter.
Neri, qua. Neri, qua. Vieni, dai. Dai, Neri, qua.
Some truffles can sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars per kilo. So most truffle hunters keep their hunting grounds a secret. A secret that can be deadly. In 1997, the community was scandalized when several truffle dogs were found to be intentionally poisoned. Today, Andrea, Maurizio, and Neri hunt in a private reserve. Umbria's geographic alchemy of soil and climate produces Italy's highest number of black truffles, which grow in this region all year round.
Dai, Neri, qua,
Neri.
aspetta.
Dai, Neri, dai, dai, su, 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 su.
Dai, Neri, dai. Dai, Neri, dai. Dai, Neri, dai. La cosa più importante, naturalmente, è conoscere i posti. È una cosa che parecchio i posti si tramandano da padre in figlio. Quindi.
9-year-old Neri started training as a puppy.
Dai, Neri, dai. Dai, dov'è, dai? Dai, che c'è, dai. Dov'è?
Traditionally, pigs were used to hunt truffles, but were deemed too aggressive, damaging the soil and tending to eat the prize. Italy banned truffle pigs in 1985. Since truffles reproduce by spores, but lie hidden in the ground, being dug up and carried off by animals is part of their reproductive cycle.
Dai, Neri, dai. Dai, Nerina, dai. Dai, che sai, dai. Dov'è? Dai, Neri, dai. Dov'è? Dov'è, Neri? Eccolo, 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 eccolo. Brava, brava, bravissima. Brava,
Maurizio
brava,
gently collects the truffle before Neri can eat it up.
Toh. Brava, 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 brava. Questo qui è un tartufo nero che ha trovato qui oggi, il primo tartufo della giornata di Nerina. Brava. E ora continuiamo, dai. Proprio sotto l'albero.
Carefully filling the hole protects the site. With luck, they'll find a ripe truffle in about 3 months.
Dai, Neri, dai.
Dai, Neri, dai.
Dai,
Per
Neri, dai.
cercare i
Dai.
tartufi, la prima regola, secondo me, fondamentale è la passione e il voler bene gli animali e amare la natura.
Bravissima, brava. Dov'è? Dov'è? Dov'è andato? Eccolo. Bella, brava, brava, brava. Bravissima,
Brava.
brava.
Now Neri's on a roll.
Brava.
Her hard work gets rewarded with her favorite biscuit. Precious to her than any truffle.
Oggi Nerina è stata veramente brava. Difatti, ecco il risultato. 8 tartufi che non sono per niente male. Brava, Neri.
It's time for the truffle hunters to enjoy the fruits of their labors, courtesy of Maurizio and Andrea's mother, Gabriella.
I am Gabriella Bianconi and I am truffle chef.
Today's menu, bruschetta and frascarelli pasta, made with garlic, olive oil, and shaved truffles.
When the oil starts to make a bubble around the pan, the sauce is ready. I just warm the truffle, the garlic, and the oil. The bruschetta with black truffle, my favorite.
Gabriella uses the same sauce to adorn her fresh-made pasta.
This pasta is very old and traditional. The name is frascarelli. Frascarelli, the name is from this whisk, frasca.
Frascarelli likely dates back to ancient Roman times, when it was prepared as a quick meal during the busy harvest season. Flour, water, and eggs, with a little lemon, become a silky pasta. The perfect canvas to showcase the truffles.
Frascarelli, a very typical recipe from Umbria, the best way to taste the black truffle, and very easy to do.
Easy to do as long as you have the truffles. The hunt continues.
Dai, Eddie.
It's training time for Maurizio's daughters, Alessia and Giada, and Andrea's dog, Eddie.
Bravo, bravo.
La cosa importante è fargli prenderlo proprio come gioco.
Vai, chiamo. Bravo, dai. Ci va.
Dai, brava. Bravissima, dov'è?
Truffles and the Bianconi family draw their strength from the connection to Umbrian soil. Each generation prepares the way for the next.
Dai, bravo.
Anche le mie figlie stanno incominciando a seguire questo stile, diciamo, perché anche loro gli animali gli vogliono molto bene. E spero che continuino con questa tradizione, diciamo.
Baked in Umbria's golden light, there's no better way to start the day than with breakfast on the terrace. Tucked away in the quiet stone streets of Orvieto lies a little shop where a family tradition unspools.
Io sono Giulia Basili.
Mi chiamo Loretta Lovisa, siamo merlettaie in Orvieto, Umbria.
Wedding dresses are not a big part of their business because making one can take several months, longer than some engagements. Loretta and Giulia specialize in Orvieto-style lace, which reworks Irish lace-making techniques that first came to Umbria in the beginning of the 20th century.
Dalla mia passione nasce, allora la mia mamma faceva dei piccolissimi fiori, sempre d'Irlanda, piccoli minestrini.
Loretta learned from her mother and grandmother, but put her needles aside for decades.
Io sono ragioniere, ho lavorato da ragioniere, mi piaceva. Poi quando ho messo su famiglia, i primi anni che ho sposato non avevo figli, quindi mi sono dedicata a questi lavori.
In 1999, Loretta opened her own shop. Crafting a lace gown is an arduous yet elegant process.
Gli elementi sono dei fiori a forma di stella e delle foglie e questi fiori e foglie sono chiamati ornato.
To support the delicate flowers and leaves, she creates an ornate guide rope.
Allora, nel merletto di Orvieto si usa una tela di base, perché altrimenti se tutti gli elementi vengono imbastiti su questa tela, vengono cuciti sulla tela.
Once the net is done, the crochet is removed, washed, starched, and ironed. The finished dress will require hundreds of lace leaves, flowers, circles, and other elements.
Questi già siamo sulle 320, 340.
Questo è un davantino che va messo nella scollatura così del vestito.
Several months from now, when the dress is complete, it will surely illustrate how much Loretta and Giulia love what they do.
Tutti i lavori bisogna amarli, diciamo, se non altro perché a me piace, ecco, io ho la passione, proprio mi piace, è più forte di me, insomma.
For over a decade, they've grown a friendship and a passion for lace that keeps them in stitches. For centuries, the town of Deruta, perched beneath Perugia and above the Tiber River, has made the most of its precious natural resource, clay.
I'm Giorgio Moretti. I'm the owner of L'Antica Deruta, an old company very famous for production of hand-painted ceramics.
Since the turn of the 14th century, Deruta artisans have created stunning glazed pottery called maiolica, typically using a white tin-based glaze. Less than 2 centuries later, they perfected a more brilliant version called lusterware.
Deruta is a very famous village. We produce pottery here since the medieval age because the clay that we use for making these vases is found here in the Tiber River.
For the past 100 years, Giorgio's family has carried on the tradition. He and his sister Camilla are the 3rd generation.
Yes, the very, very beginning was my grandmother, that she was a very great painter in town. Then my father had the vision to create a company collecting artworks. With this name of L'Antica Deruta,
Taking their cues from 15th and 16th century Renaissance traditions, Giorgio and his 12 artisans revisit classic forms for modern tastes.
The production of pottery in Deruta is very ancient, and nowadays it's not much different from the past. We make the shape on a wheel manually.
The art of ceramic goes back at least 30,000 years. The potter's wheel came to Italy sometime before 1500, as the Middle Ages gave way to the Renaissance. The process of going from clay to maiolica takes at least 5 steps, and plenty of talent at every turn. At any step along the way, from shaping to firing, to carrying the piece to and from the kiln, disaster could strike.
And when we have the shapes ready and dry, we make the first firing at about 1000 centigrades.
The forests of Deruta have traditionally provided the wood to stoke the kilns. Today, these kilns are gas-fired, and the unglazed fired pieces are called terracotta, cooked earth.
Then the plain terracotta is a deep in a glaze for glazing process.
The white tin glaze, which forms a canvas for the bright painted design to come, typifies early maiolica pottery. The piece is ready for the most crucial step, painting. Vanessa Monichi has been working here for 5 years.
Allora, io ho studiato all'Istituto d'Arte, ma questo l'ho imparato qui in azienda.
That is the main part of the work, the part that takes 90% of the process and makes the difference in the final work.
The boldly colored, intricately painted designs on a white field are what separates Deruta's world-renowned maiolica pottery from other types of ceramics.
We try to keep the tradition alive because this is very ancient work. Original pieces from Deruta are in the major museum all over the world. And the Renaissance was a very famous period for Deruta.
Before she paints, Vanessa transfers the traditional designs onto the pottery. The design is drawn on duster paper, then perforated along its outline with a fine needle. She lays the perforated paper on the vessel and beats it with a bag of charcoal dust, transferring the drawing.
Sono contenta di aver trovato lavoro qui perché comunque unisce la mia passione per la pittura con l'amore che ho per il territorio.
The colors that go into the kiln are not the colors that come out. That's the art and the magic of maiolica. The vessel will be fired again at over 1,000 degrees. 2 firings is typical, but when precious metals such as gold, silver, and platinum are used, it could take up to 10.
Sono I decori tipici di Deruta.
The slow process can't be rushed, or the vase will be ruined.
Allora, il prossimo step che farà questo vaso sarà quello di finire nel forno, in cui resterà per almeno una notte. Sono più felice quando escono dal forno che sono venuti bene, diciamo.
Now our challenge is to keep this tradition alive and to continue working in the same quality, the same tradition without changing the history that we receive from the ancient time, but try to be contemporary for the market.
Though some of the glaze formations may have been changed, and the kiln runs on gas instead of wood, the spirit and methods of this pottery stays true to the old Umbrian ways. Among the gently rolling hills and fields of northwestern Umbria, a plot of land unfolds. It's the Gritti vineyard, part of a delectable family business.
I'm Ursula Gritti, these are my kids, and we are olive oil and wine producer here in Umbria.
While this part of Italy has a winemaking tradition, it's not as well known for its olive oil, even though it produces some of the country's best.
Umbria is one of the most recently discovered regions of Italy. So it's not a long time that people are speaking and knowing where Umbria is. We came here in '94 and started the farming in '97.
Ursula, originally from Germany, and her husband Carlo moved to Umbria from Venice when their children, Andrea and Pilar, were small. It was supposed to be a vacation home, but 8,000 olive trees and a sprawling vineyard later, they knew they were here to stay. Ursula's husband Carlo passed away in 2006. Andrea and Pilar carry out their father's dream, happily doing work that's as relentless as the beauty of the Umbrian countryside.
Mio padre diceva sempre: voglio che i miei figli crescano in un ambiente dove è possibile essere umani, e l'Umbria è così, genuina.
Andrea manages the fields, while Pilar takes care of the business end. But she also helps with the harvest.
Lavorare in famiglia è un'esperienza molto divertente, comunque siamo sia io che mio fratello cresciuti in questo ambito, quindi per noi è normale collaborare.
Today, the siblings hand-pick bushels of olives. They'll select only the best ones to crush into oil, prized for its slightly spicy flavor.
E poi cominciamo a macinare.
Da quest'anno abbiamo il nostro frantoio. Le varietà che produciamo sono frantoio, moraiolo e leccino, e la varietà, insomma, sono le varietà, i cultivar tipici umbri.
When Pilar and Andrea aren't working with olives, they make wine.
E lo facciamo veramente con amore, dalla ricerca veramente di magari botti nuove, oppure comunque, come posso dire, materiali innovativi per abbassare anche l'essere il più vicino possibile all'ambiente.
They're in business with a temperamental, silent partner, Mother Nature.
We never know what the season brings, and so every year is different. Every year has surprises, and we live with every year hoping and not sleeping every night very well, because we keep the fingers crossed that everything goes well.
In 2019, the siblings started their own line of organically grown wines, even sourcing their barrels from local farmers.
Per creare questa linea di vini un po' come piace a noi, quindi legati alla territorialità, abbiamo recuperato persino botti in cemento dai contadini locali per proprio essere più legati al territorio possibile.
So far, they've enjoyed 2 good seasons. Now it's time to taste the results.
I'm very proud of my kids. Andrea is a hard worker, Pilar as well. And so, let's start with the white wine, which is the Grechetto. Color is nice. It's quite intensive. So, try. Did you try?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah.
Though they're not native to this region, it's clear the Gritti family has found its place in the Umbrian sun. Life moves a little slower here, leaving plenty of time to savor an aperitivo. Salute. Tradition flows through Umbria like the Tiber River. In the winemaking municipality of Torgiano in Perugia, one family's tradition is turning water into bread.
This mill is 1,000 years old, and it has been built by monks.
Alessandro Silvestri's family has operated their mill for nearly 250 years. He learned the ins and outs of the family business from his father and uncles. Now a teenager, he's been grinding grain since he was a little sprout.
I am really proud of this activity because I am the 8th generation of my family that produce flour.
Flour is basic to Italian cuisine, but milling it is anything but basic. The Umbrian-grown grain, stored in silos, must be cleaned, moistened, rested, and cleaned again. Only then does it go into the millstone, powered entirely by water. The grain must be ground carefully to avoid heating it up.
We can maintain all the nutritional elements like amino acids, minerals and vitamins that promote our wellness.
Then it's ground again.
So we are at the 3rd step. When the grain has been ground by the 2 machines, we arrive at this type of product.
They produce about 365 metric tons of flour a year and sell it to customers all across Europe. Pasta, pastries, bread. Each requires a different fineness of flour and stronger or lighter grinding. It's an ancient technique that stood the test of time. This mill in Torgiano exemplifies Umbrian's balance between craft and nature.
And I really like this activity because we take energy from the nature, from the water, and not a public energy.
Renaissance Italy in the 15th and 16th centuries saw an explosion of creative arts. While not everyone is fortunate enough to see the works of Leonardo, Michelangelo, or Raphael in person, one Umbrian family business has created the next best thing.
I'm Stefano Lazzari, founder of the Bottega Tifernate company and Pittografia Tecniche here in Città di Castello, Umbria.
For 30 years, Stefano and his sister Francesca and his father Romolo have devoted themselves to meticulously recreating Renaissance masterworks.
The mission is to make a painting with the same feeling, the same material, in the same way of the ancient Bottega. I started this work because I love the art. I want to stay every day in contact with the original paintings. And so the Pittografia Technique permit to me to study every day Raffaello, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Piero della Francesca. This is my love, this is my life.
The pictographia technique, which relies on this magic machine, is the family's proprietary method for copying works of art onto canvas, board, or fresco panel to match the color and medium of the original masterpiece. Stefano has been refining the secret process for 30 years.
The process is to reproduce in a mechanical way one painting, but with the same color and the same material. So when the work is finished, we have a work that is similar, it's very, very close to the original one.
The human touch augments the work of the pictographia machine.
Calcespente sabbia, quindi utilizziamo proprio materiali in uso nel Rinascimento. L'idea è quella proprio di ricreare un lavoro di bottega, un lavoro che non esiste più, con tecniche che non esistono più.
Nadia Tacchini has worked at Bottega Tefernate for 16 years, making reproductions as authentic as possible.
Allora, a me piace molto dipingere. Ci capitano dei lavori in cui bisogna veramente arrivare alla perfezione. Non dico che non arriviamo alla perfezione sempre, però ci proviamo.
Today, Nadia works on Leonardo da Vinci's Lady with an Ermine, using the same type of oil paint colors as the master. No detail is overlooked to make these modern-day masterpieces.
Io voglio avvicinarmi il più possibile al quadro originale perché voglio che la persona che poi lo porterà nella propria casa possa rivivere almeno un pezzettino di quello che potrebbe provare vedendo un quadro originale.
When the painting is complete, it gets a coating of beeswax to protect it.
Nel momento in cui il lavoro è venuto fuori come qualcosa di piacevole e che riscontrava anche il favore del mercato, e certamente la soddisfazione di mia e di mia moglie è stata immensa, perché diciamo che abbiamo riunito la famiglia dentro il lavoro.
During the Renaissance, Umbria developed its own pigment, umber, from its brownish red soil, and its own school of painting, with masters such as Perugino and Raphael. Today, thanks to the Lazzari family's bottega, the Renaissance masters are enjoying another rebirth.
È un grande amore per il quadro che viene ad acquistare e quindi tanti mi dicono è la prima cosa che guardo quando mi sveglio e l'ultima quando mi addormento, e questo per me è la cosa più bella che uno mi possa dire.
Allora, ci vuole amore perché ci vuole tantissimo tempo per realizzare un'opera, e quindi se non gli dai amore non gli dai nemmeno quell'anima alle opere, perché penso che le nostre opere che escono all'interno di questa azienda prendono quasi vita, hanno una sorta di anima.
Perugia, the hill-topped capital of Umbria, lies almost halfway between Florence and Rome. It was Central Italy's hub for textiles, dating from the Middle Ages. After the Renaissance, and with the invention of the mechanized loom, the art of hand weaving began to die out. But Marta Cucchia picked up the thread.
I'm Marta Cucchia, I'm a weaver from Perugia. Il mio lavoro e la mia passione è la tessitura a mano, e il mio cane è uno stronzo. No! Vai a cuccia!
Weaving demands obedience. Marta's work is woven into her family history. In 1921, her great-grandmother, Giuditta Brosetti, opened this workshop to this medieval Perugian specialty.
purtroppo quest'arte andò sparendo nei secoli, finché nei primi anni del Novecento alcune donne illuminate, una di queste era la mia bisnonna, diedero di nuovo vita e lustro a questa antichissima arte.
In the Middle Ages, Perugia was a market town, and one of its products was textiles, especially the Perusian tablecloth.
Questi arredi sacri nacquero proprio per arredare gli altari delle chiese e divennero famosi in tutta Europa. Li troviamo raffigurati da Giotto, da Perugino, dal ghirlandaio, addirittura l'Ultima Cena di Leonardo da Vinci.
At that time, Perugia had been relatively independent of the Pope, and in the 16th century, rebelled against the Holy See's efforts to control it through taxes on salt. To punish the city, the Pope banned textile production for commercial purposes, pushing Perugia further into isolation and self-sufficiency.
Nelle campagne umbre, questa necessità di dover fare tutto in casa perché non si poteva andare a comprare niente, fece sopravvivere tecniche antichissime, quindi la tecnica della tessitura rimase immutata per secoli, tramandata di madre in figlia, proprio perché non si potevano permettere di comprare le stoffe, ma si coltivava il lino, si coltivava la canapa, che poi si filavano, e d'inverno si producevano i tessuti per i vestiti, ma per il fabbisogno domestico.
When the ban was eventually lifted, commercial work resumed. But the invention of mechanized looms during the Industrial Revolution almost brought an end to these sacred and beautiful textiles. When Marta's mother decided to close her hand-weaving shop, Marta, aged 23, wouldn't hear of it.
E io decisi di imparare perché avremmo perso le tessitrici e quindi nessuno della famiglia sapeva tessere.
Today, she and her apprentice run one of the last hand-weaving studios in Italy. Textiles are the fabric of her life. Every weaving progresses on two planes, the warp and the woof.
Now I'm making the warp. The warp is the base of every kind of fabric, the vertical threads. And we are using in this studio the warping machine invented by Leonardo da Vinci. With this machine, I can make a really big warp with 3,600 threads of warp, long 80 meters.
The warp forms the backbone of the finished textile. Any mistake she makes in this time-consuming wrapping process will come back to haunt her later.
And this work takes 1 week for our biggest loom. And sometimes I have to be really careful because sometimes I make a mistake like this. And this is a real tragedy. Because if I jump one turn around this machine, this group of threads is shorter than 5 meters. Disaster. Then we have to undo everything. Yeah.
She carefully removes the finished warp and braids it to keep the individual strings organized. Then it goes to the loom. For a large piece, the warp alone can be unwieldy.
E quindi di solito lo avvolgiamo in un lenzuolo e lo portiamo a mo' di cadavere.
At her smaller loom, she manipulates the 25-meter-long threads like a puppet master.
Now I'm using my oldest loom. This loom works with 4 harnesses. Then I control the harnesses with my feet, with the pedals. Then I open the warp with my feet. For every different position of the pedals, I have a different opening of the warp. And in this opening, I send the shuttle with a bobbin inside.
After thousands of moves of shuttle and warp, the result will look something like this. Every handmade item is different. A pillow might take 3 days to weave. A tablecloth can take up to 2 weeks. Sometimes it's tough to tell where the weaver ends and the loom begins. It's up to Marta and a shrinking number of her colleagues to carry Perugia's medieval weaving culture into the future.
lavorato neanche un giorno. Io faccio tutti i giorni quello che amo. Tutti i giorni posso seguire la mia passione e penso di essere molto fortunata. Keep alive this traditional work is important not only for me, of course, because it's my passion, but because it's a part of our local community and culture. And then it's not only for me or for Umbria, every single community has to preserve his history and his traditional work. This is really important. Every single piece of in my studio is my baby. This work is my passion, but I think at this point of my life, I'm a part of this studio. My life is not a life of Marta. Marta is a part of the studio, like a loom.
In northern Umbria, bordering Tuscany, lies the little village of Pistrino di Citerna. Dating back to medieval times, Citerna became the first Umbrian town to join the Kingdom of Italy in 1860. Life here is like stepping through a door to the past, literally.
My name is Giacomo Belli, and with my brother Gabriele, we are the owner of the enterprise Porte del Passato in Città di Castello.
Excellent examples of Umbrian self-reliance and resilience, the Belli brothers restore and reproduce antique doors.
Because my father started his work with the antique doors, and I was very young when he started the work, but I worked with him. He taught me from the start to the end each steps of this kind of work.
Working with antique doors demands authentically antique wood. Some as old as 400 years, salvaged from demolished homes. For Giacomo's employee Francesca, fashioning old floorboards into a door requires several steps. Cleaning, shaping, and fastening. The finished door is like a piece of fine, handcrafted furniture. Over 100 years or so, weather can take its toll on a door. Giacomo gives a 17th century door a little love.
On a rustic door, because we live in Umbria, we have the example of a lot of the antique doors of the Monastero in Assisi, Gubbio, in a lot of places. You can follow the way they worked.
Giacomo restores what he can and replaces what he can't.
It's a pleasure to work on this kind of things. For instance, when I work on this surface, clean the wood, give the wax, you feel that it's something different from the ordinary.
He tries to avoid glue, which wasn't used by 17th century artisans.
This is important because during the time, the wood moved, but this particular structure gives elasticity, and so even if the door moves, it doesn't break.
The doors he works on have survived centuries, and with his craftsmanship, they'll hopefully last centuries more.
When you work on this kind of things, like these beautiful doors, you have to love it. When you love it, you feel a special sensation of work on it. Yes, you feel responsible, but you feel also happy. And happy to have the possibility to work on something that lived the past times and maybe have something to teach to you. And so when I work on these things, always I learn something.
The Umbrian landscape has plenty to teach craftspeople who take time to be inspired. In southwestern Umbria, the city of Orvieto rises above the countryside on a colossal pillar of volcanic stone called tufa. And while stone may be the most prominent material, one family has carved a living out of wood. When the Michelangeli family opened their first shop over 200 years ago, they specialized in wood furniture. Today, sisters Simonetta, Raffaella, and Donatella, along with Simonetta's daughter, carry on the tradition.
Mobili di qualità ma mobili tipo classico. Poi mio padre, dopo aver completato gli studi all'Accademia di Belle Arti di Perugia, è tornato nel suo laboratorio ed ha iniziato questo nuovo stile.
Inspired by nature, Gualverio Michelangeli began layering wooden shapes into elegant and whimsical sculptures, going wherever his imagination took him.
After attending the art school, we start creating his amazing sculptures with the overlapping of the layers, creating the third dimension. So starting from the cat, and then he investigated a lot of animals, and then he fell in love with the female shape, and he started creating faces and women.
His style brought him worldwide acclaim, but he wouldn't live to enjoy it.
When he was at the top of his career, unfortunately, cancer, and he passed away very young because he was only 57.
L'assenza improvvisa di mio padre è stata una cosa, cioè una situazione pesante e cioè in certi momenti veramente quasi insopportabile. Poi ci aveva trasmesso così tanto questa responsabilità di dover continuare questo lavoro che nessuno è riuscito a togliersi da questa situazione.
He left behind a legacy that his daughters couldn't turn their backs on. The sculptures were his life, and would be theirs too.
At the very beginning, he was not super happy on having 3 daughters because this is a pure male work. So he was saying, oh, who is going to be the next generation? Who is continuing our tradition? But the 3 girls, they had the power to continue the activity of the family and improving and make the Michelangeli name even more popular around the world.
In the workshop, they found a treasure trove of ideas, a priceless inheritance built up over decades. Today, the sisters create a sculpture inspired by one of their father's owl designs. With skills she learned by watching her father, Simonetta uses a plywood template to trace the design for cutting.
Poi dopo viene usata come dima questo modello di compensato.
When Simonetta has fashioned enough overlaps, the owl can start being assembled. The thickness of each piece might need adjusting for the best fit and effect. The wooden sculpture grows layer by layer, like the rings of the Michelangeli family tree. How long does it take to build an owl like this? About 7 generations.
Every singular piece made in this workshop is a part of ourselves, because every time we are selling one piece, it's a kind of part of ourselves going away.
Their workshop is in an old theater, which is appropriate because each piece is a performance, an act of love between generations.
We are really linked to Italian tradition, so we never are in contrast with our history. So we bring the DNA of being Italian, the DNA of being in Umbria, because we are very linked to the nature, we are very linked to the slow way to produce.
By carrying on their father's vision, they've become ambassadors of Umbrian art and craft.
Noi quella è la cosa che ci ripaga di più di tutto quello che facciamo, perché capiamo che diamo gioia alle persone. E quindi ecco, il fatto che comunque i nostri oggetti vengano non solo apprezzati ma goduti proprio, questo per noi è una grandissima soddisfazione.
On the high stone slopes of Orvieto, it's the wooden sculptures made with love that endure. Umbria. Perhaps no place in Italy has benefited so much from its isolation. Down its silent stone streets and across its pastures and woodlands, creativity blossomed and continues to bloom here.
For sure, the history of Umbria shaped the way of living of the Umbrian people.
Over time, the rebellious streak that led this region to push back against their ancient rulers has given it creative freedom too. That both empowers them to honor their old ways and inspires them to pass their skills to a new generation.
We are deeply in love with these jobs, and we are doing our best to keep the tradition alive and to pass to our next generation. And so it's all about passion here.
Today, artisans here share their flavors, textures, and designs with the world, while still managing to remain uniquely Umbrian.